Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for having
Oh
me.
my God, of course. Audrey, thank you for joining me tonight. I'm so excited to really just pick your brain and chat with you about all things nutrition and fun stuff. So, Audrey, can you give us an introduction about where you dance now, but really your journey from pre-professional dance life to now?
I grew up in New Hampshire, and that's where I got my training. I started dancing in year-round school when I was 6.
Mm,
Um, but I didn't really I grew up doing all different forms of dance. So I did ballet, jazz, tap, like the musical theater, the whole shebang.
yes.
But like ballet was like once a week, later twice a week. And I went to the types of schools where like ballet wasn't a priority.
Mm,
So like the majority of the time, and that's not to talk bad about the schools I went to because I think they're geared towards people that love to dance and that, maybe possibly want to pursue a career in dance, but not like a professional ballet career specifically. So I would take, like, the majority of the time when we did have ballet class, it was like, oh, they'd use it as a time slot to rehearse a ballet dance. And so I wouldn't really get better. But I started going to summer intensives when I was 13. And I went to Dance Theater of Harlem, Ellison Ballet, American Ballet Theater, and the Washington School of Ballet summer programs. So, and after that, like the Washington School of Ballet, they invited me to stay for the year. And that started and ended my pre-professional ballet training because I was in the Washington School of Ballet for 2 years. The first year I was in their professional training program, and the second year their trainee program, which was separated from the PTP. I think now is a little bit different. It's sort of like meshed into one, but at the
mhm.
time, trainee was almost like its own entity. So it was sort of like it sort of felt like an unpaid internship for the company.
Hmm.
And now I've been in the studio company for a few years.
Awesome. So you trained there over the summer, and then you really shifted, into your professional career also at the Washington Ballet. So had a lot of exposure to different types of techniques because you studied at ABT Summer Intensive, you studied with Ellison, you studied at Dance Theater of Harlem, and then of course you landed at the Washington Ballet. So I'm kind of curious just to hear about your experience at these different schools with their varying techniques, and then how it came about that you kind of landed over at Washington.
Dance Theater of Harlem, I can't. It's been so long since I
Mm,
was there. I was there from the age of 13 to 15. So I went there for 3 summers in a row.
mhm,
And at the time before then, I had no exposure or experience of what a professional ballet company was. Like, I had never heard of like people going to ballet schools like Boston Ballet or anything like that. Like, I didn't even know what that was. Like, I didn't even know what professional like ballet dancers looked like and like styles and all that.
mm,
So I kind of went into Dance Theater of Harlem like just learning, and for 3 summers I was like the only thing I knew. Looking back, I think it was a little definitely Balanchine. A lot of the teachers, like the one teacher specifically danced at New York City Ballet for a while. And I guess it makes sense because the founder was a principal, Arthur Mitchell was a principal at New York City Ballet
sure,
for a
sure.
while. So that was, I guess it was sort of balancing to look back, but like probably a mix. I don't really remember that well. Ellison was definitely Vaganova,
Hmm.
which was really good for me because it was so like structured,
Yes.
and I feel like that sort of helped my training in a different way. And then ABT, I guess, was just their like ABT curriculum style. I don't know, like ABT style. And then The Washington Ballet. Now, when I first got into the school of Washington Ballet, they had teachers with like really like varying styles. Like we'd have one teacher that was just pure balancing, like point shoes at the bar, like everything, like super balancing, like the counts and all that. And then the next day we'd have another teacher that was strictly Vaganova,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that was cool for us because we were exposed to so many different types of teachers. But now it's different. We don't have those teachers anymore, but I feel like um the school into yeah, more so the school, it's like they have like a specific like style of teaching now. Like even when other teachers come in, it's like it's not like one or the other like
Right.
extremes.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate both of them, but um that's sort of like what I was taught. So I think for a while, taking class, even now, like sometimes it'll be like more so balancing, and then another class, I'm like, I'm feeling a little Vaganova today. It's like, but like I think in molding into a professional, it's like you kind of figure out what works for you.
Yeah, all of this time where you are, from what it sounds like, really just broadening your learning in regards to the techniques you're learning and everything. When did you start to make a connection between food and your performance? Like how I was feeling my body is impacting my work in the studio.
Definitely when I was a teenager. I feel like that's a tough time for everybody.
Yes, so many
Um,
changes are happening at one time.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm,
Okay.
and so we ate meat. Like we would see animals and then it would be on our plate, which is fine.
Yeah.
But which is fine, like, I don't judge, but I've been a vegetarian for about 6 years, I think. And so when I was a teenager, I started to feel like I don't want to eat meat anymore. I don't that didn't really have anything to do with dance, but it does affect it because if your parents cook mostly food and then you're like, "Oh, I don't want to eat like that anymore."
Yeah.
I think it's like, okay, you have to figure out a way to get your protein and such.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but in terms of like fueling my body, like knowing like this will help me for dance, I don't know. I think as a teenager, I really didn't think about that.
Hmm.
And I think it's because I was so dependent. Like a lot of people are so dependent on their parents to like give them food and stuff. I literally just like ate whatever. I think it was when I would go to summer programs and I'd get like, especially for someone that didn't do ballet that much, to be like, oh, now you're doing like technique, rep, variations, whatever, for like 7, 8 hours a day during the summer. It really wore me out. And I didn't really understand at first, like why I just felt so depleted.
Yeah.
Um, then when I got into the year-round school at 18, but I started to realize, oh, like this, especially if you're a vegetarian.
A lot of dancers definitely struggle at that same point in regard to going off themselves and then not being under the wing of their parents who are perhaps spending more time planning their meals and their snacks. And one thing that a lot of dancers will experience is say like, oh, hey, I have to start planning ahead too. And, packing some emergency snacks and making sure that I have balance. Balance is a huge one, and not just being about protein, but also carbs and fat. And are my meals and snacks
Yeah.
incorporating these various components where, when you're at home and your parents are in charge of that, it's a lot easier. You go off on your own, you're kind of hit with that experience that you explained of feeling drained after 7 hours of training and realizing that, hey, what can I do now? What can I add to my plate that's going to help me? But Audrey, one thing I really want to ask you about, because a lot of dancers, the younger dancers that I've worked with, will experience this challenge. You grew up on a farm. You grew up where your
Mm.
family very much eats meat. You then became a vegetarian, and that was a decision that you made for, whatever reason it might be. I want to hear about how that went in regards to your decision making in becoming a vegetarian, and how the transition to you now executing being a vegetarian. It must have been quite challenging.
I'll be honest, I'm not the best cook. Like, my roommate can attest to this. Literally, like, my first year here, I wasn't a vegetarian yet because my mom, she got me this package of turkey burgers,
Hmm.
and I would put some vegetable oil on the pan, put the turkey burger on, and like turn it on. And literally, like, two or three times, the whole pan went up in flames.
Oh my
And I was like, ah! And like the first time my roommate was like, what? But then she got used to it. She was like, oh, she's just trying. So then for a while, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna cook. And I think that was difficult when you're not used to cooking your own food. I found that what helps is like a lot of times I will go to the store and buy like a prepackaged meal like that they freshly make in that section. And I'll look at it and be like, okay, I can make this myself next time.
In today's day, it's not difficult to like execute a plant-based diet, because there are so many plant-based alternatives to common foods we like. You know what I mean? Like, there are obviously alternatives to like burgers. How did your family handle you being a vegetarian?
They didn't really care.
Okay.
I think um they were just kind of like, okay, like figure out like what you need. Like they weren't offended or anything, I
Okay.
guess.
I'm sure you would agree that having some bit of nutrition education would have been super helpful for you at that time.
Yeah, for sure. My sister likes to cook,
Hmm.
and my mom would always be like, "Hey Audrey, like you want to help me cook this tonight?" And I'll be like, "I'll work outside, but I don't want to help cook." Like the resources were there.
And a lot of dancers, though, I have to say, don't end up having the time that they need to actually get in the kitchen and experiment with a zillion recipes. I
Yeah.
obviously, when the time is there and when it's feasible, it is something I like to recommend to dancers when they can do it, if they like it. Believe it or not, I'm a dietitian and I don't love cooking. I actually don't find it doesn't relax me. It's not like a stress-free thing for me. Um, I do like experimenting, though. I like experimenting with recipes and things like that. But my point is that a lot of dancers have fears when it comes to like packaged foods and even processed foods, and I think that it's important to realize that there shouldn't be
Yeah.
fear around these foods, because it's very common and practical that dancers are gonna have to rely on these certain foods. Like, I think it was an awesome example with you saying that you went and you get like some type of meal from the supermarket, and kind of take that even as inspiration for what you might want to make on your own, or might not even make on your own, but perhaps just being able to go and enjoy that meal that you didn't create. That's something that a lot of dancers need to hear in regards to it's okay.
Yeah, also that's stress,
Mm.
'cause I used to think that too because there was a point where I ate like extremely, extremely, extremely healthy. And so I would look and I'd be like, oh, I can't like buy this from the frozen section. When in reality, it was like, that's not gonna hurt you. But if you stress out, the stress will affect you, you know?
You can be too healthy. Like, there is such a thing as being quote unquote eating too healthy, to the point where it becomes an unhealthy obsession. And
Yeah.
that's the behaviors that we want to avoid, because the risks of feeling very stressed and having a lot of anxiety around food outweigh any potential pros that you might be trying to aim for with that quote unquote obsessively healthy diet. Audrey, I'm curious to hear from you. A lot of dancers tend to hyper focus when it comes to their training. This is just common, especially for ballet, where it's kind of ingrained into us. But how do you stay grounded? How do you stay balanced in your life?
I try not to take it too seriously. And I kind of had this experience today. We had a rehearsal, and I'm learning a role, and it didn't go that well. But I'm like, you know what? Like, this is it's rehearsal. Like, that's why you rehearse. But B, it's like this is life, and you can't let this little thing affect you. And someone told this to me the other day, that ballet is just ballet. And at first I was like, ballet's my whole life. Like, what are you talking about? Like, ballet is my soul. Like, you can't just say it's just ballet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the point that they were trying to make. But yeah, just like enjoying yourself, not constantly like being fully like ingrained in ballet 24/7. It's like when you listen to music. I love classical music, but I don't listen to classical music 24/7, you know? And like ballet, I feel like for those who love it, ballet doesn't feel like work. But sometimes it can't, like the rehearsal process or whatever can affect you, and you can't take it to heart and be like, "Oh my gosh, like I have to like kill myself every single day to feel like I'm working hard and whatever," because it's not worth it, and most likely it'll do the reverse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like when back in, I think it was January, I strained my calf, and I was so stressed. Like that was like the most stressful thing ever. I was trying to do like everything I could, and then it tore, and I wasn't able to perform Swan Lake. And I think a part of that was because overuse, obviously, but also I was just so stressed that it was affecting my body.
Yeah.
And it's like it's literally not worth it. If you have a birthday cake during the weekend, it doesn't matter, and it's good for your mind anyway, because you're having fun and you're having a good time. Like, go out with friends or make friends if you don't have any. Put yourself out there. You know, if you don't have any friends, go to the park, go on a scooter. Like, do what you want to do to make you happy. Like, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And especially when it comes to food being a social experience and just being an experience. And like you said, having birthday cake and enjoying it with friends, and being too stressed out over something like ballet can have the negative effect, just like you suggested. It can lead to burnout. And that's what we don't want for
Yeah.
dancers. When it starts to feel like it's not fun, that is a huge sign that it might be
Yeah.
time to take 2 steps back so that you can eventually like reignite that passion, take steps forward. And I think that's a really important point for a lot of dancers to hear, because it is so easy for us to take it very seriously, and we should be taking it seriously. It's it requires a ton of drive and motivation, and we don't ever want to take that away from ballet. But at the end of the day, we just also want to make sure that we're sustaining our mental health just as much as we're sustaining our physical health.
Yeah, another example of that is in the studio. If like sometimes, and I understand it's a long work day for a lot of professionals, but constantly talking negative, sometimes I'll be thinking, I'm like, do these people really want to dance? You know what I'm saying? And you kind of have to self-analyze. Even I do sometimes. It's like, okay, yes, it was a tough time. And that doesn't mean you can't complain, because it is healthy to talk it out to people, but it's the balance of positive and negative and what, you're putting out there.
Sure.
And so I think that comes with a lot of I guess like self-analyzing or discovery too of like, why am I here?
Yeah, of
And
course.
what can I do to feel better about being here?
It's totally fine to have your feelings and to feel upset and to feel stressed out and
Yeah.
to feel whatever it might be in the studio because it is a long day and it is really hard. But we want to think about why we're feeling that and what can we do. Is there something that we can do to help to maybe feel better, whether it's going out with friends or like you said, like bringing back that balance, which leads me into my final question for you. How would you define what it means to be the healthy dancer?
Having a balanced life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a dancer, and a lot of people say like dance is like first and foremost, but really first and foremost is you as a person. And if you're a healthy person, you're a healthy dancer.
Absolutely. And like you said before, making sure you're making time and room for all those other experiences so that it can define who you are as a person. And ballet is really just a fraction of that. It's a big fraction, but it's still just a fraction of it. And that's something important for all the younger dancers listening to hear. So thank you, Audrey. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This was such a fabulous talk.
Thank you for having
Of
me.